Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. And as we delve into this week's topic, a reminder that some of the content may be of a sensitive nature. Now, here's your hosts, Tim and Des.
Let's get into Momentum for this week. It's Tim and Des with you once again, and really great to have you tuning in wherever you may be. And just a quick big thank you to all the radio stations that take the show each week. Faithfully put Momentum on air for you to listen to. If that's how you're listening to it, we do appreciate their support. And of course, you're in the podcast space. Really thanks for tuning in and making sure that you like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz so you get the latest episodes, because there's always lots of stuff to delve into when we step into this space, and we absolutely love it. And of course, I'm never alone. Des Kennedy, my good friend, Irish friend, co-host, etc., is with us once again, smiling away there. How are you, man? You good?
When you get to my age, you have to smile every day. Take every opportunity to smile. And don't forget our Caroline, guys. If you're doing life on your own and you need a safe and confidential conversation, reach out to our Caroline. It operates from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week, 1-800-000-MAN. So blessed to get that number, 1-800-000-636. And also our YouTube channel. We've taken some of the previous recordings we have and we have used the video to produce YouTube videos. And so you can see Tim as well as hear him. It's amazing. It's really cool. And so that's Momentum for Men. Search for that on YouTube or go to our website and there's a link there that can take you to the show.
Now we've got the housekeeping out of the way. You know, Des and I did first start Momentum back in 2020 because we could see from the circles that we were moving in at that stage that men were struggling. And struggling with different things, but many of them kind of interlinked, and probably stemming from either a lack of understanding or an inability to either embrace their manhood or their masculinity.
And there's been a narrative, as you know, over the last few decades that we are in a crisis of masculinity. And a lot of the displays of masculinity, good or bad, are actually viewed as toxic. And this has left many men feeling shame about even just being a man.
Yeah. On top of that, we've had several generations of men who've grown up without a healthy or even present father. Therefore, it is really no wonder that men are struggling to step into fully manhood.
In this week's show, we're going to unpack what true and healthy masculinity and manhood looks like and how we as Christian men can embrace full sonship from our Heavenly Father. We're joined once again by our good friend and counselor, Richard Fay. Richard, welcome back to Momentum.
It is great to be back with you both again.
As I jokingly said off air, just another light and fluffy topic for us to delve into with Richard. I'm going to preface this by saying at 3 minutes in, we are probably not going to do this justice in the next 26 minutes or so that we've got. But let's launch in, Richard, because, I mean, from your experience as a counsellor and as part of, the Centre for Men and Families Australia, do you think that many men actually struggle with their masculinity? Do you think that's generic across the board for us as men?
I think it's made louder by the term toxic masculinity. I don't hear toxic adolescence, toxic childhood. I don't hear toxic femininity. I only hear toxic masculinity. And I once had someone challenge me when I had used the term. I will never use it again. Toxic mindsets, 100%. Toxic masculinity, not possible, because masculinity is good by its nature, or it could be neutral, but it's certainly not by nature toxic. The mindsets that get imposed upon masculinity can become toxic, but it's got nothing to do, and I do want to say this up front, it has nothing to do with masculinity at all. What we call toxic is not about being male.
Yes.
Can I just say that up front? Being male is good. And it's only when it's interpreted as something other than what being male is, but inferred as that is what male is, that it's a problem.
That's a huge, powerful way to start the show. And I actually really love that. I've never heard that. It would seem true. I mean, being male seems to have been shamed in this day and age, right? And that's why I think men struggle partly with that, to go, I'm almost embarrassed now because of the narrative that seems around in society about men in general.
I don't want to be seen as mansplaining. In other words, I'm almost paralyzed within my masculinity as I've got to make an excuse or an apology for who I am as far as my gender.
So when we look at then masculinity, Richard, let's come back to that. I mean, it's gone through, I suppose, different senses of definitions over the years and the decades. And now we have this narrative that, masculinity is toxic. But if we look at a healthy masculinity in 2024, how would you describe that for us? What does that look like?
Just a light and fluffy.
Again, quick little question in 30 seconds.
Masculinity is an expression of being human. So masculinity includes being afraid, sad, lonely, stuck, frustrated, and yes, angry, powerless, strong, failing, succeeding. So, you asked me to describe masculinity and end up describing being human.
Yeah.
And there are distinguishing characteristics of being masculine. Some refer to being a boy, some refer to being a man, some refer to just being male. And there are inherent things. I hear this often, where you've got a single parent and the single parent's a mum, and there are several children but only one boy, even if it's not the eldest, even if that boy is a middle or a younger child. Oh, this happens all the time. The boy inherently takes on the role of the man of the house, even when he shouldn't. He becomes parentified too early. He becomes mature and adult too early, which becomes a burden later on in life. But that itself is not helpful for the boy, and it's often unavoidable because it's inherent within his very, very spiritual DNA that I will care, I will protect, I will provide, I will support, I will nurture, I will nourish, but in a way that's different to how a woman might, a girl might. A girl will be attracted to the nurturance and nourishment in a very sensitive, caring, empathetic way, whereas the boy would become very resourceful, very creative. He'll become very assertive, not in a trying to dominate way, but in a way of he's going to show up. He's going to take initiative. He's going to step into a space. He's going to stand up for what's right and good. He'll show courage and strength intrinsically and intuitively, even as a boy. And I see this happen so often in the situations I just described. Those things are essentially good and wonderful. Can I say this? That Scripture uses the male pronoun for God. And we call God Father. This is the name that Jesus introduces us to God. And you have to ask yourself, well, is that not a bit misogynistic or a bit patriarchal? Or is it perhaps necessary to redress the misconceptions we have about what it means to be a father? Because a father provides, a father protects, a father provides nurturance and kindness and support. He says to his daughter, "You're beautiful. You are so beautiful. No, don't let any man tell you that you have to do something to have worth and value." He says to the boy, "You've got what it takes, son. I back you and support you." You see, that's the same initiative. That's the same energy that the boy might have had in childhood, he now has in adulthood. But he also has something else, and that is he's got creativity and play. And so often anyone listening to me talk on these podcasts when I'm a guest could think that I'm someone very dour and serious and intense. Trust me, I can laugh with the best of them. I can have fun and be silly and shallow and crazy, hilariously alive and playful and curious and filled with wonder and exploration. Is that not essentially something that we need to take from the masculinity of childhood into the manhood of adulthood?
So how do we do that? How do we ensure that that follows through?
Well, notice what brings you alive and go back to it, or never leave it. But often we do leave it. There's a line in a T.S. Eliot poem where he says, "Through all our wanderings, we return to the place where we started and know it for the first time." For men who've done the journey well in their 60s and 70s, they find the innocence and wonder of a boy show up more and more present in the man. Often it'll be towards the simplest things, whether it's a bird song that he starts weeping over, or being a cheeky blighter with his partner or his grandkids, getting up to mischief and and everyone knowing exactly what he's doing. He's having fun. We even use words for it. It's called dad jokes.
Yes. Yes.
You know, we love. And mum tells a dad joke and everyone goes, that's a bit weird. A dad does it and everyone groans, and we acknowledge that he's not afraid to have everyone groan at his humour. You see how good that is, how wonderful that is. We celebrate.
Yeah. But do ask him not to repeat another dad joke. Yeah. Richard, I mean, there's so much in that, man. I love what the picture that you've painted, and I think, you know, that even for, well, all of us on the call are at slightly different ages, but like we're all above 50, and I can definitely see even in my life now that returning to certain things with a different lens and starting to enjoy the simple things of life more. And I can definitely see that happening in my own life, which I think is quite profound. But I want to go back to this idea because the sense that I get, and this has been part of my journey, and I would argue probably for all of us to some degree, that when we step into manhood, there are still parts of us where we still feel like the little boy. He shows up in life, and we carry him around to some degree. And I think that happens for all of us. Now, whether we acknowledge that it's the little boy or whether we think it's just an insecurity, but do you agree that tends to be the case for a lot of us, that the little boy shows up, particularly in perhaps early adulthood?
Yes, there's a saying, and that is the older parents the younger. Well, the part of us that's older than us as men is the boy. So the boy can parent the man because the boy came first, and the boy believed things about himself which he keeps telling the man over and over. Robert Bly has a poem. There's a boy in you about 3 years old who hasn't learned a thing in 30,000 years. He says all kinds of crazy things. He's got 6 big ideas, 5 don't work. Right now he's repeating them to you. You know, you're at work and he's quiet, but at home, oh my goodness, he'll show up. When something happens, your wife, your partner says something to you that triggers you and you feel ashamed, you feel humiliated, you feel small and little, and you're terrified of the boy because it's the boy who's actually terrified. Oh, that's something I said quite profound there. You're terrified of the boy because it's the boy who's terrified. In other words, he's parenting us. He's telling us, oh, yeah, that's what always happens to me. You're so stupid. I'm so stupid. Why do I do this? I'm so dumb.
Wow.
And yes, it can. It's not just in young men. It can keep showing up right well into our 30s, into our 40s. And I've known, you know, it's almost can also be an exaggerated excuse. The man who carries on immaturely, and boys will be boys, is a saying that women will use to sort of let the man off the hook for being immature. And in other words, it's kind of fatalistic. It's, oh, well, I am who I am. I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to act like an idiot because that's what boys do. And, you know, the only difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. And so there is this inherent locking in of immaturity.
Yeah.
And the boy has great gifts, but those gifts are not stupidity. Even though they can be fun, they're not meant to be sabotaging of our lives.
Our special guest is Richard Fay. We're on the topic today of turning boys into men, manhood, masculinity. What does that actually look like? We're going to take a short break and come back and explore what do we do when we still find that the little boy shows up in our lives. How do we acknowledge that? How do we deal with that in a healthy space? We're going to come back and talk some more on that with Richard Fay on this week's Momentum after the break.
This is Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
Well, welcome back to Momentum. It is Tim and Des with you. Our special guest once again this week is Richard Fay, and we're looking at manhood, masculinity, turning boys into men, and from orphan to sonship. So, Richard, we talked about just before the break this idea of the little boy that shows up in us at times, and, that's in our responses, how we react at times, how we see life at times, and we can realize that comes from not us as an adult man, but something in our childhood that is perhaps not processed or processed well. What's a healthy way to deal with that when that happens to us? Because often we'll generally go to scolding, or we feel uncomfortable with that version of ourselves, or when that appears. How do we actually deal with that in a healthy way that will help us step into manhood as opposed to step back into the little boy when he appears?
Well, you have to reverse the flow. In other words, you have to stop the boy using his energy. And how does his energy show up? In your body. You have to notice the boy telling you who he says you are by turning to him and saying, it's okay. I'm taking over. I'm in charge here. I know who I am, and I'm enough. I'm enough. I don't have to perform to be enough. I already am. And I know you don't feel enough. And I'm going to listen to you, but I'm not going to agree with you. I'm going to care for you. You see, if I agree with you, I'll blend with you and you'll take over, and oh my goodness, what mess you could create in an adult world, or how overwhelmed you must feel. Because that's the other option, is that the boy, if he's running a man's life, that man's going to feel overwhelmed. I've just become a father. I don't have any idea how to be a father, so I avoid responsibility and I leave my wife doing all the heavy lifting of being a parent to a young child. I'll just work harder, or I'll just get busy with other things, or I'll feel like the third wheel in this relationship between mum and child, mum and baby, because the boy doesn't know how to be a parent. That's at the point you go, I know how to step in here. I'm just going to choose to.
Yeah.
And also, as a father, if you are a father listening and you've got sons, be very aware that your sons at a young age are going to wake up the boy in you. Be very aware that you might find yourself responding to your sons in the way that your father responded to you when you were that age. Was that helpful?
Wow.
Listen very carefully to that.
Yeah. I mean, that is really interesting, because I can remember, I had a great childhood, but I can remember my father not answering me or not being involved in things I wanted to be involved to. And I have to say, I did the same with my kids. I'm just reinforcing what you've just said. It goes through generations, doesn't it?
And that's the only way if it doesn't go through generations, is someone along this long line of history says, it ends with me.
Yeah.
I'm reversing the flow here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will give it to your sons and they'll carry it until they choose to end it, or they give it to their sons. Someone has to say it's... Now, I heard this a couple of weeks ago, and this is such a profound statement. Providing secure attachment to a boy is always hard work. It's the role of parents. Can I especially say it's the role of a father, because he gives identity to the boy. Isn't that a strange thing for me to say, but he does. The mum gives comfort and reassurance to the boy, but the dad gives identity to the boy. He can't get it anywhere else. He can't. God, the Father, gives me my true identity. I'm a beloved son of God, period. End of story. It's gifted to us. We cannot do the hard work of our own identity. It must be given to us. So secure attachment is given by the father to the son as a boy. And if that doesn't happen, then the man has to do that hard work for the boy he was. And he can't let the boy's energy tell the adults who he is. The man must care for the boy he was. He must reverse the flow. Otherwise, and he can only do that if he finds his own identity first. He can't do it out of a sense of no identity. And if a man doesn't have a sense of his identity, you cannot construct it. You will try to. We all do. That's what you were saying earlier, Timothy, in your 20s. We're all busy trying to construct an identity because we're told that's how it's build something, go do something, become someone. And it's only later on we realize that's not an identity. That's a fabrication. An identity is gifted to us by a Father. And if any man listening to this does not know that you were created by a good and loving Heavenly Father, who might be very, very different to your father if he was not slow to anger and abounding in compassion, kindness, trust me, the nature of God is nothing like the Father you might have had, unless he's like that.
There's so much in what we're talking about, and we are running out of time. What I do want to say is, and of course, Richard, you know this because you were there, but I was a part of that in August 2020, the group for the Rites of Passage. And I think I was about 46 then, and maybe at that stage, 46, 47. And having never done anything like that, it had a profound impact. And not just on me internally, but then how that shifted my whole life, actually. And I would encourage men to certainly explore doing something like that. It almost puts to rest some of the things perhaps that you've been wrestling with and enables you and gives you permission to step into that place of manhood, masculinity. But Richard, what I do want to end with is this. For men listening, there might have been some light bulb moments. There might have been some really uncomfortable moments in the last 20 odd minutes that we've been talking, because they can see when, whether it's in their mind's eye or they just go, oh, you know what? I can see where the little boy's popping up. Oh, I responded there. Where's that coming from? And often we'll tend to want to run from that space in the moment because it is uncomfortable or we don't like who we've become in that moment. But for the guys listening to some take-homes here to go, hey, when you get the trigger point or when you feel like the little boy is there, what are some healthy ways of handling that so we can start to move forward into this idea of manhood, healthy masculinity, but also sonship?
I want to say two words. A felt truth is not necessarily a truth. A felt truth is quite possibly a lie, but a lie has some truth in it. It's just not the whole truth. It's a distorted truth. And so you will know it's not the truth because it's the truth always sets us free. But the problem with the truth is it always makes us a bit miserable first. In other words, inherent in the lie is the fact that it can't set us free. And so what happens is we have this difficult energy within us, this shame, this humiliation, this desolation, whatever it might be, those emotions which feel overwhelming. And if we can't stay with those emotions, then we can never learn from them. We can only ever be driven by them. Because when we can't stay with them for any length of time to learn from them, we are actually being hooked by them and then avoiding them. And in avoiding them, we make them stronger because we're telling ourselves and those energies they're stronger than us. If I run from something I don't like, I don't want that feeling. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid that feeling. I'm actually saying that feeling is stronger than me. And as soon as I say that, I give it that strength because I've just said to that thought or feeling, you are going to destroy me, crush me if I can't avoid you, medicate you, numb you, distract myself from you. And so I go back to all those habits that I just said, numb, distract, avoid, medicate, in order to not feel them. But now they've got power, so they're going to show up again. You could guarantee it. As soon as the sun sets, as soon as the sun rises, it's going to happen again. So don't think you can run from this. You can run, but you can't hide, to quote that phrase. You can run, but you can't hide. So to quietly and gently thank that difficult, unpleasant, uncomfortable emotion and say, maybe I need to see somebody who's going to help me unpack this because it's just too much of a cacophony in me. It's flooding me. I might need the support of a therapist who's going to walk with me quietly and gently to unpack it. That's true. Maybe I've got a wise elder in my life, someone who's lived a bit more of life and lived life well, who will sit with me. You might need that. This might be something you cannot do alone. I get that. But can I just say that excrement becomes fertilizer, which leads to growth. The most distressing emotion is often your greatest teacher when you learn to understand what it's saying.
It's powerful. Turning boys into men, from orphans to son. richardfay.com.au is Richard's website, by the way. You can find more information and lots of resources, and maybe hook up a time with Richard if you feel like that's something you might need to do. richardfay.com.au. Of course, our website, momentumaustralia.org, and lots of stuff there to help you on this journey. And this has been a really deep, powerful, profound conversation, but also one that is really, really necessary for us as men to step into this space. And as Richard just said, when you step into that space, the stuff that you're actually avoiding can be some of the best stuff when you turn it around and deal with it in a really healthy fashion. We encourage you to go on that journey. Richard, it is always a deep, meaningful, profound conversation. Thank you once again for your time and the conversation today, turning boys into men, from orphans to sons. Being profound. Thank you.
It is great to be back with you both again.
You've been listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. For more information or to hear this week's show again, go to momentumaustralia.org. You can also access a whole range of resources to help you on your journey and to get in touch with the team at momentumaustralia.org. Until next time, keep moving forward with Momentum.